Every single morning, billions of people eat bread. And every single morning, millions of those people feel terrible afterward, bloated, tired, heavy, like something inside them just isn't sitting right. Doctors call it gluten sensitivity. Nutritionists call it inflammation. The internet calls it 1,000 different things and sells you 1,000 different solutions. But here's what nobody is telling you. People ate bread every single day for thousands of years. In the Bible, in ancient Israel, in the time of Moses, of David, of Jesus himself, and they didn't have this problem, not because their bodies were different. And the secret behind that bread isn't complicated. It isn't expensive. It doesn't require a fancy kitchen or a culinary degree. It requires 2 ingredients and one thing that nobody in the modern world wants to give anymore: time. This is the story of what ancient bread actually was, how it was made, why it was one of the healthiest foods on earth, how Jesus himself used it to teach one of the most important lessons of his life, and how we quietly destroyed all of it without anyone noticing. Let's go back to the beginning. Long before supermarkets, long before packaged bread, long before factories and preservatives and expiration dates printed on plastic bags, there was a woman, standing in a small stone kitchen, with flour on her hands and fire in the corner. That's how bread started, not in a laboratory, not in a corporation, in a home, by hand, with nothing but grain that had been ground between 2 stones and water pulled from a well. In ancient Israel, bread wasn't a side dish. It wasn't a snack. It was the meal. It was calories. It was survival. It was community. When the Bible says, "Give us this day our daily bread," it wasn't being poetic. It was describing exactly how people ate. Bread, every day, the center of everything. And the bread they made, the bread that sustained entire civilizations, was nothing like what we buy today. It was alive. If you wanted your bread to rise, you had to catch the yeast yourself, from the air around you. Here's exactly how it worked, and this is real. Archaeologists have confirmed it through excavations across ancient Israelite sites. A woman would mix flour and water together, just those 2 things, and leave the dough sitting out, open to the air, floating invisibly through every kitchen, every field, every home in the ancient world were billions of wild yeast spores. Microscopic, weightless, riding the breeze. Within a day or 2, those spores would land in the dough and wake up. The dough would start to bubble, to smell slightly sour, to come alive. That living dough was called the senor in Hebrew. We would call it a sourdough starter. But here's the part that makes this beautiful. You never threw it away. Every single time you made bread, you pinched off a small piece of that living, bubbling dough and saved it in a clay jar. Next time you baked, tomorrow, next week, whenever, you dropped that saved piece into the new batch. The wild yeast woke up again. The whole process started over. The same living culture could be passed from mother to daughter, from grandmother to granddaughter, from one generation to the next for centuries, sometimes longer. There are sourdough starters alive today that are over 100, 200, even 300 years old. Bakers treat them like family heirlooms because that's exactly what they are. Every loaf of bread in ancient Israel was sourdough, not because they were artisan bakers being fancy, just because that was the only bread anyone had ever made. And that slow, simple, ancient process was quietly doing something extraordinary inside that bread. Something that protected the people who ate it in ways that took modern science thousands of years to figure out. Before we get to the science, let's stay in the story for a moment, because this bread wasn't just food. It was woven into the most sacred moments of Scripture. In the Gospel of John, chapter 6, Jesus is standing in front of a crowd of thousands of people, and he says something that confuses almost everyone who hears it. "I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry." The crowd murmurs. They know who his father is. They know where he's from. Why is he comparing himself to bread? But think about what bread meant to that crowd. Bread wasn't just carbohydrates to them. Bread was the thing that kept you alive. It was what you ate when you had nothing else. It was what a mother made before sunrise so her children would have something to eat. It was what strangers shared when they met on the road. It was the most basic, most human, most necessary thing on earth. When Jesus called himself the bread of life, every single person in that crowd understood exactly what he meant. Because bread was life. It was what sustained you, what nourished you, what kept you going one more day. And the bread he grew up eating? It was ancient sourdough, long fermented, made the slow way, caught from the air of Galilee, the same bread Mary made in that small house in Nazareth, the same bread he broke with his disciples at the Last Supper, the same bread that appeared, miraculously, when he fed 5,000 people with 5 loaves on a hillside. This wasn't abstract theology. This was real food, from a real kitchen, made with real hands, and it was doing things inside the bodies of the people who ate it that even they didn't fully understand. Here is the secret, and it is almost embarrassingly simple. Ancient bread fermented slowly, for 12 hours, sometimes 24, sometimes 48, the longer the better. During all that time, while the dough sat quietly on the counter, covered with a cloth, doing nothing visible from the outside, something extraordinary was happening inside. The wild yeast and the beneficial bacteria living alongside it were eating, breaking things down, transforming the dough from the inside out. And one of the most important things they were breaking down was something called phytic acid. You don't need to memorize that, just understand what it does. It acts like a lock inside the grain. It grabs onto the good nutrients, the iron, the zinc, the magnesium, and it keeps your body from absorbing them. You eat the bread, the nutrients travel straight through you. Your body gets almost none of them. Ancient sourdough, because it fermented for so many hours, destroyed most of those locks before the bread ever touched your lips. The bacteria ate the phytic acid, unlocked the grain, set the nutrients free, which means every piece of ancient bread delivered more actual nutrition to the person eating it than most modern bread delivers today. Even the bread we artificially enrich with added vitamins to make up for everything the fast process strips away. They weren't trying to be healthy, they were just patient. And the second thing the long fermentation was doing, this one is even more important, is breaking down the gluten. Gluten is a protein in wheat. In modern bread, it arrives in your gut intact, tough, difficult to process, especially if your digestive system is already under stress. But in long-fermented sourdough, the bacteria spend hours pre-digesting the gluten for you. By the time the bread reaches your stomach, much of that protein has already been broken into simpler pieces your body can handle easily. Your gut isn't fighting the bread anymore. It's receiving something familiar, something it recognizes, something it was designed to receive. Here is the part of this story that stops people cold. There are people walking around today who have been told they are gluten intolerant. They haven't eaten bread in years. They cut it out completely, and they felt better, so they assumed bread was the problem. And then some of them, cautiously, skeptically, tried real sourdough, long fermented, the old way, flour, water, wild yeast, thyme, and they were fine. Not all of them. People with celiac disease have a serious condition that requires medical attention. That's different and real. But a significant number of people who believed they could never eat bread again discovered that what they were actually reacting to wasn't wheat. It was modern bread. Bread rushed through a factory in 2 hours, with bacteria that never had time to do their job. The problem was never the bread. The problem was the clock. We taught bread to run, and then we wondered why our bodies couldn't keep up. Go to any grocery store, pick up a loaf of bread, even a good-looking one with seeds on top and wholesome words on the label. Turn it over, read the ingredients: flour, water, salt, and then the list keeps going. Dough conditioners, emulsifiers, preservatives, vegetable oils, and commercial yeast, a single laboratory strain of yeast, developed in the mid-1900s during World War II, designed to do one thing: Make bread rise fast, 2 hours instead of 2 days. And that, right there, is where everything broke. Because in 2 hours, the bacteria never get to work. The locks on the nutrients stay locked. The gluten arrives in your gut undigested. The sugars hit your bloodstream all at once. Fast spike, fast crash, and an hour after eating, you're tired and foggy and reaching for something else. The bloating starts, the heaviness, the feeling that something isn't right, but you can't figure out what, because you just ate bread, and bread is supposed to be fine. It's not the bread, it's what we did to it. We took an ancient food that required patience, built an entire industry around eliminating that patience, and called it progress. Picture a woman, a mother, a grandmother, rising before the sun comes up. The house is quiet. The fire in the corner is low. She reaches for a small clay jar kept near the warmest part of the room. Inside that jar is a piece of yesterday's dough, alive, slightly sour-smelling, quietly bubbling in the dark. This piece of dough might have been in her family longer than she can remember. Her mother gave it to her. Her grandmother gave it to her mother. She drops it into a wide clay bowl. She adds flour, rough, whole grain, stone ground, still containing everything the grain was made with, pours in water, cool, fresh, works it with her hands until it comes together into a shaggy, sticky dough. Then she covers it with a cloth, and she walks away. She doesn't come back for hours. Sometimes she leaves it overnight. The dough sits in the warmth of the house, slowly, quietly transforming, rising not because of a packet from a factory, but because of wild living yeast that has been kept alive in her family for as long as anyone can remember. When she comes back, the dough has grown. It smells tangy and alive and slightly earthy. She shapes it with her hands into flat rounds. The bread of the ancient world was usually flat, not tall like our modern loaves, and she bakes it on a hot stone or in a clay dome oven called a taboon, which sat in the courtyard and was fired with olive wood. What came out was something with a slightly crispy outside, a chewy inside, and a mild sour flavor. No additives, no preservatives, no fortification, no expiration date. Just flour, water, wild yeast, and patience. That's it. That's the whole recipe. And it worked for 6,000 years. Let's talk about what actually went into ancient bread, because every ingredient tells a story. 1. The grain, whole and unrefined. Ancient Israelites used emmer wheat or einkorn wheat, older varieties of grain that are naturally lower in gluten and higher in nutrients than the modern wheat we grow today. They ground it themselves, between 2 heavy stones, into a coarse flour that kept the bran, the germ, and all the natural oils intact. Modern flour has most of that stripped away in the milling process, which is why modern bread has to be enriched with vitamins afterward. Ancient bread didn't need enriching. It was already whole. 2. The water, just water. That's it. No milk, no sugar, no oil in the basic loaf. Just water, added a little at a time until the dough came together. The temperature of the water mattered. Warmer water woke the yeast up faster. Cooler water slowed things down for an even longer fermentation. 3. The starter, the living heart of the bread. This is the most important ingredient. A small piece of the previous batch of dough, kept alive and fed regularly. The starter contained wild yeast caught from the local air and lactic acid bacteria, both working together. This is why ancient sourdough from Israel tasted different from ancient sourdough from Egypt. The wild yeast floating through the air of each region was unique to that place. The bread tasted like where it came from. 4. Salt, a little, added late. Salt was added to flavor and to slow the fermentation slightly, giving it more control. Here's an interesting detail. In ancient Israelite offerings to God described in Leviticus, salt was always required. It was a covenant ingredient, a symbol of preservation and faithfulness. Season all your grain offerings with salt, it says in Leviticus 2 verse 13. Do not leave the salt of the covenant of your God out of your grain offerings. Now, the best part of all this? You can actually make it yourself, right now, this week, with things you probably already have at home. And honestly, it's simpler than you think. First, build your starter. All you need is whole wheat flour, water, and a clean glass jar. That's it. On day 1, mix 2 tablespoons of flour with 2 tablespoons of water. Stir it, cover it loosely, it needs to breathe, and just leave it on your counter. Don't overthink it. Then every day after that, you do the same thing. Add a little more flour, a little more water, give it a stir, and walk away. By day 4 or 5, something starts happening. Small bubbles, a slightly sour smell, the mixture coming alive, and by day 7, your starter is ready. One quick tip: use filtered water or just leave tap water out overnight before using it. The chlorine in tap water can slow things down. Small detail, big difference. Then, bake your loaf. The night before you want bread, mix together 3 cups of flour, 1 cup of water, half a cup of your bubbly starter, and a teaspoon of salt. Bring it together with your hands, cover the bowl with a damp cloth, and leave it on the counter overnight, 8 to 12 hours. That's the long fermentation. That's where everything we talked about actually happens, the nutrients unlocking, the gluten breaking down, the bread becoming what bread is supposed to be. In the morning, shape it into a round, let it rest 1 more hour, then bake it in a covered pot at high heat, around 450 degrees Fahrenheit, for about 45 minutes. When you tap the bottom and it sounds hollow, it's done. Your first loaf won't be perfect. Neither was anyone's, but it will be real, and that already puts it ahead of almost everything at the grocery store. And here's the part that I love most. Once you have your starter, you keep it alive. Feed it, use it, share a piece with a friend. This is exactly what families in ancient Israel did, passing the same living dough from one generation to the next for centuries. You're not just baking bread, you're keeping something ancient alive in your own kitchen. And that's exactly why we're here, on this channel, in this community. Because the ancient world has things to teach us, not as museum pieces, not as dusty history, but as living, breathing wisdom that still applies to the food we eat, the faith we carry, and the way we choose to live. Every video on biblical footsteps exists for one reason: to walk you back through the world of Scripture, slowly, honestly, without rushing, so that when you read the Bible, you don't just read words on a page. You see the kitchens, you smell the bread, you feel the weight of what those people actually lived. If this video fed you something, in whatever way that means to you, share it with someone who needs it. Leave a comment telling me what surprised you most. And if you haven't already, join the family here on Biblical Footsteps, because there is so much more ground left to walk. Until next time, keep following the ancient paths. This is Biblical Footsteps.